And this is, some people know her as YSL Granny, but this is Trisha Renaud, I believe it is. She is joining us from Atlanta, where she is a jury consultant, and she has worked with Brian Steele for years. She was a journalist before she became a jury consultant, and she met Brian through her work as a journalist, as a legal journalist in Atlanta at the Daily Report, which has a storied reputation as a legal newspaper. When I worked at ALM, it owns the Daily Report, and the Daily Report was always one of the flagship newspapers. Like all newspapers, it's not what it once was, but it has a really strong legacy in legal reporting, and that's where Trisha got her background, and we're going to talk all about that. But first, we're going to get into everything YSL trial, because I know everyone is really interested in how this jury was selected and her thoughts on this year-long trial. So bring her up here. Trisha, thank you so much for joining us. I know everyone's really excited to see you and get to talk to you in person. I was once talking to Max Schardt about the fact that sometimes people see the people like you and attorney bots who don't have speaking roles in trial and really wonder what they do. So it's great to be able to, because I said a lot of the times they're doing, a lot of work, most of the work behind the scenes. So it's great to be able to hear from you. I know you weren't in the courtroom for the verdict because you were working with Brian Steele. So after Jeffery Williams took the plea deal, that ended your technical involvement in the case, but you said you were still following it, right? Can you tell us where you were when the verdict came in?
I was actually in my living room. I followed the trial after I left the courthouse, and I had it on background. I was doing something else online, probably hunting for ideas for Christmas gifts for my grandkids, but I heard there was noise in the courtroom and switched screens, and it was absolutely wonderful. I was thrilled for those guys, for all the lawyers and everyone who worked so hard on this. It was wonderful.
Such a long time coming. Was it a surprise to you?
Not really. I felt very comfortable that Deamonte Kendrick would be acquitted. With Shannon Jackson, I did not follow the Drinks material quite as well, but Max did such a wonderful job. He sort of switched my thinking. And I thought, he just may go home too. So, yes, I was not particularly surprised, no.
And did you see the difference in the possible outcomes as just a matter of the evidence in the Thomas case versus the evidence in the Drinks case?
I thought both of those cases were lacking in evidence, especially after watching Detective Hogan, the issue with the surveillance video. I did not think it was as weak a case initially, but Max knew it better than me.
Yes.
But he did a great job.
Yes. So can you take us back to your initial involvement in this case? Was it, I mean, you were there for jury selection. That's your big part of it. Before this, had you ever done, or what was the largest jury pool you'd worked with before this?
Maybe a little over 100. So that's
this was
crazy.
2000, was it?
Yes, right around 2000.
Wow. So how did that affect what you were doing? Did it affect what you were doing? Just a sheer number?
Well, for starters, before we even had the jury pool, when I work on cases with Brian, he wants me to review the discovery. And I did in this case. All 8 terabytes. I started in July 2022, shortly after the indictment, and continued reviewing discovery. And they kept providing discovery even when trial got underway. So, but I was on top of discovery. I kept myself an index, trying to keep tabs on it. My index was over 600 pages.
Wow. Wow.
It was the only way to find things for me. I could search it by name, by topic, and it's just something I put together for myself. But it was that long. It kept growing and growing and growing.
And what are you looking for when you're putting that together? How is that informing your decisions on the jury?
I'm looking for issues that are good for us, potentially troublesome for us. I'm trying to put together what the story is here, really. And I'm assisting Brian in putting together cross-examinations for witnesses. And some of that is before even we got the jury pool. Once the jury pool started, we got to tackle the questionnaires, which were very time-consuming to go through. Luckily, the judge had agreed to let us do a questionnaire. I had drafted a questionnaire and other people contributed. It got bigger. A total, I think, 39 pages. But we had a tremendous amount of information.
And what types of questions were on the questionnaires?
We asked people's backgrounds, their experience with the criminal justice system. We asked, did they know the Cleveland area? Any experience with gangs? We asked opinions on rap. Do you listen to rap? How often? We asked about if they thought lyrics were usually autobiographical. We asked some hardship questions. We asked if they knew any of the lawyers in the case. Things sort of to help cut down on the time for voir dire. So I went through the questionnaires and pulled out, there were certain questions. Do you automatically assume that someone who raps is more likely to be a criminal than other people? Those are the kind of hot button questions that I was interested in. And I would keep track of responses. And this was all while the hardships were going on.
And how many responses did you get to that question that made you say, let's not have this person on the jury? Can you pinpoint a number?
A fair number. I can't give you an exact number, but yes. But it was very helpful in knowing how to talk to people. And some questions pretty much already disqualified someone. They would say, I've heard all about this. I can't be fair. I really hate gangs. We wouldn't have to go much further.
You made it pretty easy.
Yeah.
Were there challenges in making sure none of those people were on the jury? I mean, sometimes it doesn't always work out the way you want it, but was it pretty easy to eliminate those people given the size of the pool?
A lot of people had hardships, so that really whittled it down without getting to that first. Yeah, I would say we had a pretty good pool to select from by the time we got done with individual questions. There were a few, there are always a few you can't get for cause, who we would have liked to have gotten for cause. But
did you have an idea of who your ideal juror was or who your ideal jurors would be? Just a hypothetical? And who would they be? Can you describe them?
Well, first of all, You probably know, Meghann, that you don't select jurors, you deselect them. You're
Right.
really striking people you would not like to see on the jury. So in terms of those people, we look for people who are very rule oriented, law and order oriented,
Mm-hmm.
who have ties to law enforcement, who victims of crime, people who had experience with gangs, um, and some of the typical thing, and people who thought rap was horrible. There were people who thought it was horrible. It was full of misogyny and bad words
Mm-hmm.
and tattoos. We asked about tattoos. There were some people who thought if you had tattoos on your face, you were a criminal, no doubt. So those people, they just couldn't get past certain things.
Yeah.
But when you're looking, in terms of people you're looking for, I look for open minded people. It's really not a question of demographics. I could see the state was striking younger jurors, people who listen to rap, particularly young black men who that I believe they were afraid would identify with the defendants.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but and it was obvious that young jurors in general were not going to be put off so much by rap or the language or the tattoos. But demographics is really not a good method for selecting a jury. And I can give you a good example from this jury. Um, there were two, and I won't give their numbers, but there were two white jurors
Mm-hmm.
who came from totally different backgrounds from our clients. And you might think, well, they can't relate at all.
Mm-hmm.
Um, it was almost as though they were raised in a different culture. One was from a rural background, um, and one had never been around guns, was kind of appalled by guns. But what they had in common was they were open minded people and they were curious. One of the jurors, one of those two, said she had recently, to educate herself, read the book, The Hate You Give, which told me this was a woman who wanted to learn and was a kind woman.
Mm-hmm.
The other person was from a different culture, curious and open, and they were terrific jurors, but they had this innate kindness and open mindedness to them.
Yeah.
So if you went by demographics, you wouldn't think they would be great jurors, but they were.